Yeah, we're gonna get crazy.
Hello?
Hi, Lindsay.
Okay. Let's see here. All right, Nicole?
Yes?
Nicole?
Yes.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. I'm going to put my headphones on. And Nicole, you know that I can't hear anything that happens with my headphones on. So you need to be like this if something happens.
Got it.
Okay? All right. When I started the graduate program in the summer of 2013, I was just finishing my full-time school year as an art teacher in an international school in Singapore. At that time, my artwork focused heavily on costuming and installations aimed at further escape and playfulness. My intent for going back to school for my MFA was twofold. I wanted the ability to distance myself from my work with young people for a short while, yet still be connected to them during the school year. And I wanted the directed space needed to advance my studio skills, expand my vocabulary when presenting my work, and assist me with becoming a more improved artist, capable of sustaining an evolving practice. Over the past 4 years, in tandem with this MFA program, I taught for 3 years in Singapore and 1 year in Qatar. Both experiences, drastically different, but both experiences allowed for me to examine my everyday. In Singapore, I walked to and from work each day of the week and rode my bike to the grocery store and to friends' houses on weekends. Occasionally, I would take train. These methods of transportation, ones where I didn't have to drive, allowed me to slow down a bit and concentrate on what task going from point A to point B. As a result, I started photographing or videoing things daily that would capture my eye. This method of collecting quickly turned into a way for me to observe, record new experiences, relay information about my new home to my family and friends back in the United States, strike up conversations with people I would meet along the way, make artwork. I started keeping a blog and posting images and videos on various social media outlets. I became obsessive about recording things, afraid that I would forget what I had seen otherwise. Anytime I went to a new place, a new country, anywhere that was new to me, was reason to observe and record. And what I realized by doing this was that I could build relationships and connect to people in new places. People could voluntarily participate. They could appear in the pictures or videos, direct the pictures or videos, or if they were back in the States, they could follow along via Instagram or Facebook or Twitter or web. I began to realize that there were layers of ways that people could participate, ways I could engage with people in my daily life overseas and during my travels. And I was excited about the new method of engagement that was so different to me, just having someone put on a costume to run around in. Living in another country, you overstimulated. The smells, the sounds, the colors, symbols that don't quite make sense, the occasional language barrier. It's exhilarating and absolutely perfect for someone like me who naturally gravitates to sensory overload experiences, shiny things, bright colors, abstract sounds. In my installation, bangagitatetransitrepeat, I wanted to position the viewer to feel like they happened upon something new or discovering something for the first time. I did not want people to recognize everything they were looking at, but more or less feel a bit removed. I cut up the space in the gallery to create pathways, stations, and points of emphasis. This helped to make the space feel more active and like the roads one might happen upon in India or Indonesia or Nepal, or the pathways to outdoor markets in Qatar or Oman. There are areas in the gallery where one might feel claustrophobic or pushed in upon by the space. That is living in Singapore. That is visiting China. That is walking down any street in India. Navigation can be exciting and a bit of a challenge. When thinking about objects that I happen upon, either in my daily life or while traveling, I tend to equalize everything in my brain. Clothes on a clothesline, the same to me as party bunting, which reads the same to me as tied-off construction barriers. Sometimes I find myself thinking about the person whose job it was to make all of the packs for the construction barrier, and I imagine him or her carefully tying off each strand, knowing exactly when to switch colors. In my installation, a few items are lit to signify an importance to the space, but for the most part, I try to hold each item up to the same honor, where everything feels significant, a room filled with ritualized symbols that are comprehensible. The people in the photographs are seemingly adorned in all sorts of craziness. Not necessarily culturally significant, but one could start to read them that way. I held 10 photo shoots in Qatar with people who worked at my school or whom I became friends with over the short time that I was there. During these photo shoots, I interviewed my friends about their experiences living overseas and what it was like to be labeled an expat. If they could describe their international experience in one word, what would that word be? Then, together, chose pieces from around my house to dress them in. Tablecloths, head wraps, art supplies, construction supplies, whatever. The photos and the stories behind the photos are very important to me. The interviews I did with the people who posed for these photographs was my research for this project, experiential research. The stories they told me were far more intriguing to me than anything I could find in the book. George, now deemed a travel deity, is from Romania. His history is steeped in Bohemian culture. His descriptive word for his international experience is transitory. For 12 years, he had been working in tech support for companies largely based in the Middle East and Europe. He told me that he moves house every 2 months, or to stay in any one place too long. We talked about how movement or nomadism be the result of great privilege, or it can be the result of a need, like food, water, shelter. Dorinda, from both the Philippines and the United States, talked about her international experience as being about discovery, unearthing of self, new foods, new experiences, new everything. When I photographed Dorinda, she was about to move to Latvia after teaching in Qatar for 3 years. Olu, who is from Nigeria, spoke about connection. When living in new places, she likes to find connections to things from home, like friend groups, church, and food. This helps her to feel less disjointed. Shelley from Scotland describes her experience as confusing. Trey and Jess from the United States describe their experience as adventurous. And Yana from Cyprus and Bleka from Greece describe their international experience as having tension. What they are wearing in the photographs then made its way into the installation because it was important to me that the viewer begin to recognize things in the real space that were also in the photographic space, seeing the connections between the objects used in the installation and the object photographed. I want my installation to feel like a market with sounds that seem hollow and distant. My original plan was to have very little sound, but when I started putting all of the videos together and I began to hear the sounds that were coming from various clips, I knew that I had to have sound. And I wanted the sound to be authentic and unedited, and play on top of, or at the same time as, the myriad of other sounds in the space. The relationship between some of the sounds and the sounds themselves hold meaning for me. I cannot possibly remember everything that has happened over the past few years, but the things that I took away from all of these places have memories associated with them, or at least some sort of special significance to me. The objects I have collected over the past 4 years almost provide more memory than anything a photograph or a video could provide, because the memory is embedded in the objects. And the stories are attached to people as well, which is the most important part of the memory. These objects are memories of friends and people that I met along the way. Furthermore, my identity starts to become made up of fragments from all of these travels, fragments from these experiences. The world gets incredibly small, incredibly fast. Connections get stronger, both physically and virtually. I lived in Singapore for 3 years and Qatar for 10 months. There are not very many examples of Qatar in this installation. I didn't have the relationship with Qatar that I had with Singapore, which greatly overpowers my installation. The term expat gets thrown around a lot. There are running arguments for whether to use the term immigrant or expat, and sometimes this argument falls along class lines. For me, it always felt like a bad thing to be called ex anything, as if I were being thrown out of the United States, like I was being excommunicated. But there are expat clubs, social circles, and all sorts of ridiculous ways one can socialize with other expats in other countries. I always found that rather strange. Why would I want to socialize with people in another country that are from the United States? If I wanted to hang out with people from the United States, I would just stay in the United States. So I tried to avoid labels the entire time I was in both Singapore and Qatar. I simply said, I'm an art teacher who happens to work in so-and-so country. I found art and theater organizations in both countries that were locally populated and sought friendships that way. And on the rare occasion, I hung out with other teachers at my school. The process of assimilation in another country is an interesting one. As a foreigner, you can never fully assimilate. I had friends that lived in Singapore for close to 15 years, and they never felt like they were home. I never quite understood this, because I have always felt my home is wherever I was living, whether it be Singapore, Doha, Baltimore, Austin, or Nashville. As unrealistic as this is, I want the viewer to share in my experiences. I want them to be riding in a cab with me in Hyderabad, turn their head to look out the window and see a herd of water buffalo shuffling down the highway in the midst of all the trucks and tuk-tuks and cars. I want them to be in Colombo with me at dinner time, standing on a street, hearing the symphony of clanging metal as Kochu is being made across the city. I want the viewer to stand on the rooftops of Delhi with me, gaze out over the city, taking in the most amazing palette of colors. Celebrate. To be honest, this past school year, was no good, and the year before that was no good either. After a year of dealing with death and moving to a new part of the world, only to be sick for 5 of the 10 months that I was there, I could have easily made this installation about all the things that I do not celebrate about living overseas. Easily. I choose to pluck out the positives. Living overseas was a transformative and incredibly rewarding experience, regardless of the likely things that got in the way. I was introduced to the work of Jimmy Coonley during my first summer in IMFest. Jimmy makes the most incredibly fun inflatables. They are giant and brightly colored and completely interactive. Just to watch him working with some nylon and the wind outside is hilarious, because the pieces are so awkward and unpredictable. But he says this about his work. You know you only get one chance at this life. You only go around one time, one spin around this globe. And I figure, well, I might as well knock out fun and interesting situations while I'm at it. As an extension of my video of my installation and sent it out via 3 different sources asking questions to help form my presentation. Questions came in via email, Facebook, and Instagram from Qatar, India, Singapore, and the United States. I will share some of those questions and their answers with you guys now. How does the use of Skype reinforce the idea that technology brings the world closer together? Or does it reinforce interpersonal dislocation? For me, Skype was pretty much my only source of communication with my family and friends back in the United States when I was overseas. It was hilarious because there was something like a 13 to 14-hour difference between us, so it was a major deal to organize. Skype was the way I interviewed for, got my teaching jobs in Singapore and Qatar. And it's how I interviewed for and received my job back in the United States for this fall. I interviewed for the Peace Corps in April via Skype, talked to my MFA cohort during 2nd and 3rd year via Google Hangout, and FaceTimed with numerous friends on a daily basis. I think for some people who have hermit tendencies, Skype and other forms of media socialization can create barriers to real-world experiences. Because it can feel like you're relating and interacting with others, but there is always a screen in between. The screen almost acts as a safety. My school in Singapore had a 1-to-1 iPad student ratio, and my school in Qatar had a little car that went from class to class with iPads. I think technology is hugely important, but it was really bothersome to me that we were encouraging so much screen time at school with students as young as 3 years old. In my art classroom, I tried to avoid having the students make things with our computers or iPad. I knew that my students were on screens in almost every other class, and I knew that they were on screens for several hours when they got home from school. I wanted my students to collaborate with each other, communicate with each other, and to make things with clay and paint and paper and fabric and food objects. I keep dreaming that when I move to Florida in August, I will close out all of my social media outlets and sort of switch off for the 2 years that I am teaching there. But now that I have made friends in other parts of the world, where we depend on these social media sources for communication, I'm finding that it will be hard to just stop everything. Even trying to limit my time online down to 1 day a week seems impossible. We shall see. Items in the installation. I am assuming the first video was a welcome. Which country's language was it? Why did you choose it? Shelley is welcoming people to the space in Dora, which is a Scottish dialect. When we were doing her photo and video shoot, she spoke to me about elements of confusion that she felt when living in other countries. Language barriers, signage, systems like rules and governing bodies. So as we were talking about these things together, she mentioned wanting to start a conversation with me in Dora to see if I could follow along. Of course, I had no idea what she was saying, but I love the idea of welcoming people to the space in another language. I have had interesting feedback since the installation has been up that has reinforced the ideas that Shelley and I discussed. People are confused and intrigued by the language in relationship to costume. What is the significance of the closed drying rack and the ladder? How does the orange construction barricade netting contribute to this installation? For me, the closed drying rack was really important to this installation because it was such a presence I liked in Singapore. Everyone in Singapore dried clothes this way. They were on balconies in high-rise apartments and on driveways in single-dwelling homes. And in Singapore, I took several fabric dyeing classes, and these drying racks are frequently used in fiber arts for processing of cloth. The ladder is one of the few items in the installation that I purchased in America, Bell's Hardware in Baltimore, which still references my home and place, which has been Baltimore every summer for the past 4 summers. Additionally, I use ladders when installing all of my artwork, but in this artwork provides both a function for the installation and it's an important device for holding the projector and separating the space. The orange barricade used to fashion bustles on the 2 women in the photographs near the ladder. In the physical space, the orange barricade alludes to the breaking down of barriers and the meshing of boundaries. There is also an interesting dialogue between the barricade in the room and the barricade in the photos. Why is it important to cover your subject space? Is it to draw emphasis on the cultural symbol's place? What is it about taking the personal identity out of the subject, out of the picture that is important to you? The subject spaces are to provide a sense of anonymity to them as they are performing, and therefore not representing any sort of culture, but focusing primarily on costuming, motion, and color. This question talked about locations and local responses. Beyond identifying Singapore and Qatar in your artist statement, why did you decide not to identify some of the other places you visited? Have you spoken to any of the locals of some of these countries about the artwork? If so, what were the reactions? What reactions did they have to it? I am not specifically representing any one country. Although I have referenced Singapore and Doha in my art statement, I don't think it's necessary to list out all of the places that I have traveled. I'm using my memory and my memory associated with the objects in space to create this work. For me, this installation was about addressing this particular space with the materials I collected through my travels over the past 3 years. I've had numerous responses from colleagues in India, Singapore, and Qatar. By viewing the installation via video, their responses include comments on color, energy, and sound. I thought it was fascinating that they were able to describe to me an interesting experience for watching the video. This was surprising to me because I thought the main experience would have been in the physical space. But my friends and colleagues were able to experience this work via video, which adds another layer to the project. How has your travel affected your views on color and light? How did you choose the patterns? What is most fascinating to me about the places that I have visited is this attention to decorate color and light. The individual metallic streamers that are hanging on the entrance of the tent were used to inspire the color for the entire installation. These streamers are from Jaipur in India, where they are used to decorate bunkers on dump trucks and workshops. In Western art circles, decoration and ornamentation are deemed excessive. Color and patterns are valued in these places I visited, which is what I was most attracted to. The lighting in the installation is darkened to enhance reflection and color. The end.